All right, busy night tonight. Welcome to Hannity. The left is getting very desperate, and breaking tonight, New York's liberal attorney general trying to dissolve the National Rifle Association with a new lawsuit. Really, just 89 days before the election. Sounds like weird timing to me. So is the state of New York using taxpayer money to interfere in the 2020 election? Why now? And we'll explain. I think there are other priorities the state should be concerned about, like safety and the lives of its citizens. We'll investigate that. Also, this madness, along with the left's conspiracy theories, their hysteria, their usual slander, all ratcheting up because Democrats have nothing positive to run on. And this is now a fact. Joe Biden is a disaster. He looks frail. He looks extremely weak, even from his basement bunker, with the lightest possible schedule of any presidential candidate in history. He is struggling and struggling big time. What a whopper day we'll call today. He's really not even campaigning. He's just, poking his head up for an hour or two out of the comfort of his own home. And yet he cannot hold it together. So far this week has been an unmitigated disaster. It started yesterday when Biden had this weird, strange, embarrassing public breakdown while touting his cognitive fitness. See if you can understand this. Pay very close attention to the words fitness at the end of this.
But please clarify specifically, have you taken a cognitive test?
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, if you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say to President Trump, who brags about his test and makes your mental state an issue for voters?
Well, if he can't figure out the difference between an elephant and a lion, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Did you watch that? Look, come on, man. I know you're trying to goad me, but, I mean, I'm so forward looking to have an opportunity to sit with the president or stand with the president in debates. There can be plenty of time. And by the way, as I joke with him, I shouldn't say it. I'm going to say something I probably shouldn't say. Anyway, I am very willing to let the American public judge my physical and mental as well as my mental fitness, and to make a judgment about who I am.
Come on, man. We need bumper stickers and T-shirts. Let's see. You get tested for cocaine. Are you a junkie? Come on, man. Loses his train of thought 3 times in a minute. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. An elephant and a lion? Did he mean an elephant and a donkey? Meaning, what does he mean here? This is just, the beginning of his bad week. Why is he having such a hard time saying, I can look forward to the fitness? Now, if he really means that, well, we can have the extra debate that Donald Trump has called for before anybody votes, before early voting starts. That is fair for the American people. Let the American people decide. Joe says he's looking forward to it. Okay, game on, Joe. Do it before a single vote is cast. Can't say the word fitness. And by the way, just a short time ago, just a matter of fact, he said, of course I had a cognitive exam. I'm tested constantly. Okay, when he's out of the basement bunker, he doesn't know sometimes what cities he's in. He doesn't know what office he's running for at times. He doesn't remember or doesn't seem to remember that we are endowed by our, the thing, the thing. Joe, the answer is God, the creator of everything. If you forget, give me a call. I'll help you out in the middle of the debate. We can cheat. Nobody will know. Now, he can't tell his wife from his sister at one time, and so we'll use his words. Come on, man. I don't know what the hell he's saying. What's going on here? Now, Democrats refuse to talk about it in public. The mob and the media, they're not talking about it in public. But I can tell you, I know for a fact in private, they're telling me and many other people they know it is a serious problem. They can't put their head in the sand forever, like an ostrich. Like it or not, Biden's cognitive abilities are extremely troubling, and they will be on the ballot. And what we're seeing, frankly, is just bizarre. It's not normal. That's all I know. I look at a frail guy that if he ever had a slow pitch, seems to be gone. And we witnessed today yet another disaster for Biden. During a virtual event with the National Association of Black Journalists, National Association of Hispanic Journalists, Biden suggested that African Americans are all the same. What? You know, remember first we heard, you ain't black? Now this? Take a look.
Unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
Okay, we'll let you decide. Pretty much a terrible thing to say. Judgment, broad sweeping generalization. Earlier, President Trump, he responded, calling Biden's remarks a great insult to the African-American community. Take a look.
Joe Biden this morning totally disparaged and insulted the black community. What he said is incredible, and I don't know what's going on with him, but it was a very insulting statement he made. It was a great insult to the black community.
And for the record, it was Donald Trump that put criminal justice reform. He's the one that did it, not Barack, not Joe. Police reform, that's Trump, not Barack, and not Joe. Funding for the largest amount of money and the longest commitment of time, historically black colleges, that was Donald Trump. That was not Barack, and it wasn't Joe. And by the way, record after record after record low unemployment for every demographic in this country, including African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Yeah, that was Donald Trump. Biden and Obama gave us 13 million more Americans on food stamps after 8 years, and 8 million more in poverty, and the lowest labor participation rate since the 70s. Worst recovery since the 40s. President's right. And by the way, can you imagine the hysteria on the left if it was Trump who made those horrible remarks? Keep in mind, this is not an isolated incident for the ever-forgetful and corrupt Joe. His track record on race is atrocious. His close personal mentor, as he said, the person he praised was, the former Klansman Robert KKK Byrd, the guy that filibustered the Civil Rights Act of '64, opposed the Voting Rights Act of '65. Lyndon Johnson relied on 80% Republicans in the House and Senate to pass that. Not a lot of Democrats. Al Gore's father, he wasn't there when history mattered. Imagine if Donald Trump praised the former Klan leader who, in fact, filibustered the Civil Rights Act. In the 70s, Biden actively working with desegregationists. Why? To slow school integration. Let's go to NBC News, shall we? He led the charge on an issue that kept black students away from the classrooms of white students. And according to the Washington Post, Biden spoke out repeatedly and forcefully against sending white children to majority black schools and black children to majority white schools. 1977, Biden worried that his children, that happened, would grow up in a racial jungle. A few years later, Biden lied about marching in the civil rights movement. He also lied about endorsements from the NAACP. 1993, he's the guy that referred to inner city youth as predators on our streets. 2006, he's the guy that told the crowd, well, you have to have a slight Indian accent to work at a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts. Quote, I'm not kidding. 2006, he bragged that his state was a slave state. 2007, he's the guy that said, this is the key word here, the first mainstream African-American who is articulate and bright and clean. That's storybook, man. Come on, man. Man comes up a lot with this guy. Anyway, last year he said, quote, poor kids could be just as bright as white kids. And recently Biden said, quote, you ain't black if you support Donald Trump. And then he said, of course, we're going to put you all back in chains. When you think about it, Biden's track record on race is nothing short of a disgrace. And imagine if Donald Trump had said all these things.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
What kind of a chance would a northeastern liberal like Joe Biden stand in the South?
Better than anybody else. And you don't know my state. My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. My state is the 8th largest black population in the country.
You got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Okay. Now, if Biden were a Republican, if he were Donald Trump, he'd be ripped to shreds by his own Democratic Party and the media mob. I've laid out the history every 2 and 4 years, how the media divides rich versus poor, old versus young, black versus white. I played that history repeatedly. And by the way, Biden's statement today about African Americans was not only the only puzzling moment from his virtual event. In one very bizarre moment, Biden actually changed his position on the filibuster almost mid-sentence. This is the same exact virtual hearing. It's not like, well, he said, I've been tested. I'm constantly tested. I've never been tested. How dare you ask me if I'm tested? Take a look.
What I said was that if, in fact, they are as obstreperous as is expected, we'd have to get rid of the filibuster. But the filibuster has also saved a lot of bad things from happening, too.
So you're open.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I thought I'm on record as saying that if the Republicans, if there's no way to move other than getting rid of the filibuster, that's what we'll do.
Oh, Biden earlier today made comments about the diversity of African and Latino communities. I want to clarify. In no way did I mean to suggest the African-American community is a monolith, not by identity, not on issues at all throughout my career. Oh, we're laying out your career. I've witnessed diversity of thought, background, sentiment. Yeah, okay. As you can see, that just came out. He just tweeted that out. It's not just weak because of his inability to communicate clearly, but also he's struggling to shore up his radical socialist base. And by the way, now in order to make them happy, he is running the most progressive platform that's ever existed in history, and recently promised to halt all border wall construction if he ever becomes president. He's promised amnesty to illegal immigrants. In other words, will become the United Sanctuary States of America. He also said today that illegal immigrants should receive subsidized health care. Take a look.
Should undocumented immigrants also be able to get subsidized health care?
If they are working in the United States of America and they are paying taxes, they should have access to health care. They should have access to what everybody else has access to.
The
most important thing to do.
Undocumented worker?
No, it depends. Not all undocumented workers are working. You say on every undocumented worker.
And he promised amnesty, just added to the list, government subsidized health care for illegal immigrants. His $92 trillion appeasement for the Green New Deal. He's promising to spend trillions on AOC's plan, which is madness. $52 trillion doubling down on stupid Obamacare, some version of Medicare for all, free housing, free higher education, free healthy food by the government, guaranteed, free child care, free paid family leave, free vacation, free, everything's free. Now, all of your needs will be taken care of, cradle to grave, womb to tomb, all of your worries eliminated, and a magical socialist utopia. The only problem is these problems are completely unfulfillable. They're false promises. The math doesn't add up, not even on Joe's, old-fashioned abacus. And if this radical agenda is ever implemented, your friends and your freedoms, friends, guess what? The friends that love freedom, it's going to be stripped away. Your wealth, it'll be confiscated. Your businesses will be destroyed. America, as we know it, that is freedom and liberty. And guess what? Capitalism will be gone. They are statists. These are socialist policies, and they will fail. It's been tried. It has failed too many times to count. And that is what is on the ballot in 89 days. It's all on the ballot in 89 days.